Good morning, Dan and Amy. Well, that ceasefire in Syria was announced, and as Mike Scott just reported, that ceasefire in Syria has already been violated. At least that's the accusation from Turkey. So it doesn't seem like that's going well. John Kerry saying this ceasefire may be the last chance to save united Syria, but it could go south. Well, it seems like it's going south. But for more on this and other topics, including the 911 families legislation, the right to sue Saudi Arabia, we're joined by Fox News strategic analyst, Colonel Ralph Peters. Colonel Peters, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, great to talk to you again, Dan.
So what about the ceasefire in Syria? What is the expectation of that producing any long-term peace?
Well, based upon the previous track record, it's very difficult to be optimistic. Now, clearly, a ceasefire that held would at least alleviate the tremendous individual suffering and group suffering, but it doesn't solve the problems. And it's so, when Kerry talks about the last chance to preserve a united Syria, I have two problems with that. One, this administration is always talking about last chances. It's a new, instead of red lines, it's now last chance, except it doesn't turn out to be the last chance. But the even greater concern I have is the utter lack of innovative thought, imagination, or even a sense of practical reality on the part of our diplomats, as exemplified by John Kerry. Why should it be the world's top priority to preserve a united Syria or to preserve Syrian territorial unity? Syria is an artificial construct. Its borders were drawn by Europeans after Versailles for their own interest. You've got a Kurdish area in the northeast, Turkic Arab area in the north. You've got a heavy population of the Christian Arab minority along the coast. You got the Alawites in the south central area. You've got, of course, Damascus, which has always been traditionally a mixed city, though basically Arab. And the parts don't fit together. It's the same thing in Iraq. If you really were redrawing the boundaries based upon the population's desires and identities, the borders would look very different. So why on earth shouldn't our priority be, to the extent we should have a priority at all in shaping the future of this area, to help the locals reshape their boundaries in a more natural way that is less likely to cause future conflict.
So are you suggesting that we're taking the path of least resistance in Syria, and in doing so, we're doing the bidding of Putin and Assad?
Well, that's yet another point. Yeah, we're taking. It's not even the path of least resistance. It's the only path that Kerry and Obama can imagine, which is talk, take a firm position and then compromise it. And essentially, the deal that came through is a gift to Putin. It's a gift to Assad. I mean, this ceasefire agreement does absolutely nothing to remove Assad. Remember when President Obama said, he could not possibly stay in office? Well, Assad's going to be there. As I've said for years, Assad will be there long after Obama's gone. It's a gift to Hezbollah. It's a gift to the Iranians. Now, who does it betray? It betrays our Kurdish allies. It betrays the freedom fighters, the ones we've been backing on the ground, because although it's a cessation of hostilities, what's happened in the past, when you've had these ceasefires, and by the way, there will always be slight violations. I don't worry about the violation of the first 24 hours. I want to know what it looks like 96 hours out. But these ceasefires have been used in the past by the Assad government and its allies, the Iranians, Hezbollah, to set themselves up for another offensive. And generally, when they will agree to a ceasefire after they've just had battlefield successes, so they can resupply, refit, and then attack again when they're ready. So what Kerry presents as a victory is absolutely delusional. It will briefly alleviate some humanitarian suffering. That's the best can be said of it. But Putin's won.
All right. I wanted to get to some breaking news that happened while most people were sleeping. Syria claims to have shot down a Israeli warplane and a drone. Was there any truth to that?
The honest answer is I don't know yet. We have to wait for confirmation. I'd say it's quite possible they shot down a drone. I'd be very surprised if they shot down an Israeli airplane over Syrian airspace. The Israelis are pretty good at evasion. If they did, there will be consequences for whoever did shoot down an Israeli aircraft. But again, it's a very dangerous, very volatile area. And again, another part of this Syria deal is we're going to be, if the ceasefire holds, we're going to share intelligence with the Russians. Well, I can guarantee you that'll be largely a one-way street, with us giving the Russians information and them giving us only selective data they want. They'll only give us targets they want us to hit. And so, again, it just stuns me. John Kerry, Amy, he has convinced himself that he's a master negotiator. Mm-hmm. And you look at the Iran deal, you look at this ceasefire, you look at previous agreements in Syria. This guy is the worst negotiator I can think of in my lifetime representing the United States. He's the kind of guy that would go into a car dealer and look at a car with a $15,000 sticker price and offer to pay the dealer $75,000 for it. I mean,
and take the rust proofing. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just he would ask him to throw in the floor match. But it's just stunning how bad this guy is, and Obama lives in such a bubble at this point. He's just so anxious. I mean, he's in the military. We used to call retired on active duty, ROAD. He's really essentially given up. He just wants to make it through to Inauguration Day without any major hiccups and major embarrassments.
Well, you mentioned Iran, and our new partner in peace there threatened to shoot down 2 U.S. Navy surveillance aircraft flying close to the territory in the Persian Gulf over the weekend. This is the latest in a number of tense moments between our partner in peace and the U.S. military. How is that going, our new partnership?
Yeah, well, the Iran nuke deal was supposed to provide peace in the Persian Gulf in our time, and it obviously hasn't done so. It's given Iran license to run wild throughout the Middle East, as they have done, because the Iranians realize full well that there is absolutely no way that Obama will do anything to jeopardize the nuke deal, his great legacy deal. So they do what they want in Iraq, they do what they want in Syria, and they're doing essentially what they want in the Persian Gulf. And the core government in Tehran does not want a direct violent confrontation with the United States. But the Revolutionary Guards, who are essentially a shadow government, have their own interests, and they don't even like the nuke deal as advantageous as it was to Iran. And the chances are good that the Revolutionary Guards will provoke a situation, a violent situation. Now, there are 2 possibilities. One is that they would actually try to shoot down a U.S. aircraft, which, counting on Obama not to respond, and the chances are very good that Obama would not respond with force. The other thing they've been trying to do, though, is with those little, fast boat swirling around our destroyers and even carriers and our patrol boats in the Gulf, they're trying to set up a situation where we shoot first. So we're the bad guys, and then they can retaliate and sink a small American vessel, which would play very well domestically for their home audience, but also regionally. The goal, you have to think in terms of not the daily or weekly goals, but the ultimate goal of Iran. A goal they share with Vladimir Putin is to drive the United States out of the upper Middle East, out of Syria, Iraq, the Persian Gulf. And they're well on their way to doing that. I mean, our ships continue to patrol the Persian Gulf, but the rules of our engagement are such that essentially, if the Iranians decided to shoot first, we're sitting duck targets. It's like a shooting gallery at a state fair.
We're talking to Fox News strategic analyst Colonel Ralph Peters. I wanted to get your take on the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, or JASTA. This flew through Congress, huge bipartisan majorities. President Obama has indicated he is going to veto it. This would allow, for example, 9/11 families, somebody killed in the 9/11 attack, to sue Saudi Arabia civilly. And President Obama is going to veto it. But you've also heard from some on the right, including John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the UN, and former Bush Attorney General John Mukasey, say he should veto it, that this would do more harm than good. It would not hold state sponsors of terror responsible as the proponents think. What's your take on it?
Well, this is one of those questions where there's no easy answer, and I can argue both sides. Certainly, the Saudis are villains. All of the Sunni terrorist movements we've seen, Al Qaeda, ISIS, Jabhat al-Nusra, which is now Jabhat al-Sham, I suppose, the Taliban, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, the various splinter movements throughout the greater Middle East, they have all been inspired by the Saudi Wahhabi approach to Islam, this radical Salafist theory that the Saudis have spent generations now exporting, using their money, their oil profits, to impose their pre-medieval, primitive, hate-filled, misogynistic version of Islam on the rest of the world. So, the Saudis have been called, the arsonists and the fire brigade. No, they're just the arsonists. Now, the Iranians are Shia. That's a different problem. But all of these Sunni terrorist movements, all of them, can be traced back to the Saudi version of Islam, Saudi money, Saudi influence. And it continues to this day.
And so, a civil remedy, if you had to make a call, what do you say?
Yeah, well, you get me on the Saudis, and I just go off the rails. But ultimately, Mike, I think John Bolton and others are right in the sense that what this does do, it would open up the door for all sorts of frivolous lawsuits against the United States. With people in Iraq that we were trying to help, claiming, "Oh no, you killed my donkey, you owe me $10 billion," and I think it would open the door to fruitless, destructive, expensive litigation. So I don't want to let the Saudis off the hook, but there are other ways to punish them.
Okay.
And, so that's all I can say.
All right, Colonel Ralph Peters, Fox News strategic analyst. Colonel Peters, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.